The stars had always called to humanity. For 200 years, they had answered that call, spreading across their small corner of the galaxy. But the universe was vast, and humanity was small. They were newcomers in a galaxy ruled by ancient powers, who looked upon them with cold eyes and colder hearts. Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport of the UES Messenger of Dawn, watching the stars drift past. She was 62 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a simple braid, and eyes that had seen both the best and worst of her species. Earth had chosen her for this mission because she was patient, because she was wise, because she believed, truly believed, that peace was possible. Behind her, her granddaughter Mira checked the navigation console. At 28, Mira had her grandmother's sharp mind, but not yet her patience. She wore the uniform of a United Earth lieutenant, crisp and proper, but her fingers drummed nervously against the console. "We arrive in 6 hours," Mira said. Elena nodded, but did not turn from the window. "Are you afraid?" "Should I be?" Mira asked. The Vailith have ruled this galaxy for 80,000 years. They have watched species rise and fall like waves upon a shore. To them, we are children. Worse than children. We are insects who have somehow learned to build starships. Mira moved to stand beside her grandmother. "Then why did they agree to hear us?" Elena smiled, but there was sadness in it. Because even insects can become annoying enough to notice. The Vailith hegemony controlled 4,000 species across 1,000,000 worlds. They were ancient beyond human understanding, living for tens of thousands of years. Their technology could reshape planets. Their fleets could darken suns. And they had decided, long ago, that humanity was dangerous. For 50 years, Earth had been quarantined. Humans could not leave their home system without permission. They could not trade freely. They could not expand. They lived in a cage of invisible walls while the galaxy moved around them. Elena's mission was simple: convince the Vailith High Tribunal to end the quarantine. Give humanity a chance to prove themselves. It was, everyone knew, almost certainly hopeless. But Elena had volunteered anyway. "Someone has to try," she had told the United Nations Stellar Council. "Someone has to extend the hand of friendship, even if it might be cut off." The Messenger of Dawn was an unarmed ship. This was intentional. Elena wanted the Vailith to see that humanity came in peace, without threat, without hidden weapons, just words and hope. 6 hours later, they arrived at Vailith Prime. The planet was beautiful in a cold, perfect way. Massive crystal spires rose from its surface, glittering in the light of 3 suns. Cities floated in the clouds. Ships moved in precise patterns, like schools of fish in a cosmic ocean. Everything was ordered. Everything was controlled. There was no chaos here, no mess, no unpredictability, no humanity. Elena and Mira were escorted to the High Tribunal chamber by guards who did not speak to them. The Vailith were tall and slender, with pale blue skin and eyes that held no warmth. They moved with the slow confidence of beings who had never known fear. The chamber itself was enormous. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of species filled the galleries, watching silently. At the center, on a raised platform of white crystal, sat the tribunal, and above them all, on a throne that seemed carved from starlight itself, sat Zorath Kell. The Primarch of the Vailith hegemony was ancient even by his people's standards. He had ruled for 12,000 years. He had ordered the extinction of 17 species he deemed too dangerous to exist. He looked upon Elena Vasquez the way a human might look upon an ant. Elena walked to the speaking platform with steady steps. She had prepared her speech for months. She had practiced it until every word was perfect. Now, standing before the rulers of the galaxy, she spoke from her heart. She spoke of humanity's past. Yes, they had been violent. Yes, they had made terrible mistakes. They had waged wars and committed atrocities. But they had also grown. They had learned. They had created art and music and science. They had built a civilization that valued peace, that protected the weak, that dreamed of friendship among the stars. "We do not ask for power," Elena said, her voice steady and clear. "We do not ask for conquest. We ask only for a chance to prove that we have become more than what we were, a chance to contribute to the great community of species. A chance to be your partners, not your prisoners." She finished speaking. Silence filled the chamber. Then Zorath Kell laughed. It was not a warm sound. It was the laugh of someone who had heard a joke that was not funny, told by someone who did not matter. "The human speaks of peace," the Primarch said. "The human speaks of growth." He raised one long pale hand, and holographic images filled the air. Nuclear explosions, mass graves, cities burning. The worst moments of human history, broadcast for all to see. "This is what you are," Zorath Kell continued. "This is what you have always been. Violence lives in your blood. Destruction lives in your souls. You are not a species that made mistakes. You are a mistake." Elena did not flinch. "We have changed." "You have hidden," the Primarch replied. "You have learned to wear masks. But beneath the mask, the beast remains." He stood, and his shadow seemed to fill the chamber. "The tribunal has already made its decision. Your quarantine will not end. It will become permanent. Your species will remain in your system until your son dies and takes you with it." "And me?" Elena asked quietly. Zorath Kell smiled. It was the cruelest expression Elena had ever seen. "You came here as a representative of your species. You will die as one. Let all the galaxy see what happens to those who waste the tribunal's time." Mira screamed and tried to run forward, but guards held her back. Elena turned to look at her granddaughter one last time. There was no fear in her eyes, only love and something that might have been a warning. "My people will remember this," Elena said calmly, "and they do not forget." The execution beam struck her. For one moment, her body glowed with terrible light. Then she was gone. Not dead, erased. Every molecule scattered to the void. Zorath Kell looked at Mira, who had stopped struggling. Tears ran down her face, but her eyes held something the Primarch did not recognize, something he should have feared. "Take the young one back to Earth," he commanded. "Let her tell her people what she has witnessed. Let them understand their place in this galaxy." Mira was dragged away. The galleries began to empty. Zorath Kell returned to his throne, satisfied that he had taught the humans a lesson they would never forget. He was right about that. But the lesson they learned was not the one he intended. The broadcast reached Earth in minutes. 8 billion people watched Elena Vasquez die. They watched her dissolve into nothing, while the Valith Primarchs smiled. They watched their ambassador, their grandmother, their symbol of hope, erased like she had never existed. And then something strange happened. Nothing. The Valith had expected panic. They had expected riots, protests, governments falling, nations turning against each other. That was what lesser species did when faced with despair. They broke apart. They crumbled. They proved why they could never be trusted with power. But humanity did not break. Humanity did not crumble. Humanity went quiet. Across the globe, people stopped what they were doing. They turned off their screens. They held their families close. And they waited. Not in fear, in something far more dangerous. In patience. Mira Vasquez arrived at Earth 3 weeks later. The messenger of dawn docked at the Geneva orbital station, and she walked down the ramp into a crowd of thousands. They did not cheer. They did not weep. They simply stood in silence as she passed. their eyes following her with something that looked like respect. And underneath the respect, something darker. The United Nations Stellar Council met in emergency session. The chamber was full, every seat taken, every screen showing the faces of leaders from every nation and colony. Mira stood before them, still wearing the same uniform she had worn when her grandmother died. She had not changed it. She would not change it until this was finished. "Tell us," said Director General Amara Okonkwo. She was a tall woman with gray-streaked hair and a face that showed no emotion. "Tell us everything." Mira told them. She described the chamber, the tribunal, the Primarch's cold smile. She repeated her grandmother's last words. When she finished, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Okonkwo stood. "They have judged us," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, but beneath it burned something ancient. "They have decided that we are animals, that we deserve to die in a cage, that our hopes and dreams and everything we have built means nothing." She looked around the chamber, meeting every eye. "They are wrong, and we will teach them just how wrong they are." She pressed a button on her console. Across the solar system, sealed doors opened. Encrypted files were unlocked. Secrets that had been kept for generations were finally revealed. 50 years ago, Okonkwo continued, when the Valith first imprisoned us, our ancestors made a decision. They hoped for peace. They worked for peace. But they prepared for war. The screens around the chamber lit up with images that made several council members gasp. Ships, hundreds of ships. Then, thousands. Warships unlike anything the public had ever seen, hidden in hollowed-out asteroids, in the shadows of moons, in places no one had thought to look. The Black Fleet, Okonkwo said, 1,200 vessels, built in secret, crewed by volunteers who have trained their entire lives for a war they prayed would never come. She showed them more. Weapons that could tear apart matter at the molecular level, engines that could move ships without being detected, soldiers who had studied every Valith battle for 50 years, learning their tactics, finding their weaknesses. "We did not build these things because we wanted war," Okonkwo explained. "We built them because we knew that peace might not be possible. We built them because we learned long ago that hoping for the best is not enough. You must also prepare for the worst." Mira watched the council members' faces. Some showed shock, some showed fear, but most showed something else. Relief. The relief of people who had felt helpless and suddenly discovered they were not. "What are you asking of us?" one council member asked. Okonkwo's expression did not change. "I am asking for nothing. The decision has already been made. The Prometheus protocols have been activated. The Black Fleet has been mobilized. In 3 days, we go to war." "This is madness," another member shouted. "The Valith have ruled the galaxy for 80,000 years. Their fleet numbers in the tens of thousands. We cannot defeat them." "Perhaps not," Okonkwo agreed, "but we can hurt them. We can make them regret what they did. And we can show the galaxy that humanity does not kneel." She turned to Mira. "Lieutenant Vasquez, your grandmother died representing Earth. Would you like to help avenge her?" Mira's hands were shaking. "Tell me what to do." Deep in the asteroid belt, Admiral Kiran Shaw stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution. He was a man of 55, with a scarred face and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. He had hoped it would never come. Around him, officers moved with quiet purpose. Screens showed the Black Fleet assembling, ship after ship emerging from hiding places across the system. They were beautiful in a terrible way, these instruments of war, sleek and dark and deadly. "Admiral," his second-in-command said, "the fleet is ready, all 1,200 vessels reporting battle-ready." Shaw nodded slowly. He had read the reports from the tribunal. He had seen Elena Vasquez die. He had watched the Primarch smile. "What are our orders?" the commander asked. Shaw was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was cold enough to freeze stars. "For 50 years, we have been patient. We have done everything right. and they killed us anyway. They killed a woman who came to them with nothing but hope, and they smiled while they did it. He turned to face his crew. Every eye was on him. Proportional response is no longer our doctrine. We are not going to wound them. We are not going to teach them a lesson. We are going to show them what humanity is capable of when we have nothing left to lose. He looked out at the stars, toward the distant point of light that was Violet space. They wanted to see the beast they accused us of being? Fine, let them see it. Let them see it and weep. Across the solar system, humanity prepared for war. Parents held their children and explained that sometimes you had to fight, not because you wanted to, but because the alternative was worse. Soldiers wrote letters to loved ones they might never see again. Workers in factories pushed themselves to exhaustion, building weapons and supplies. And somewhere, in a small garden on Earth, where Elena Vasquez used to sit and watch the sunset, her daughter planted a tree. It was a small thing, barely a sapling, but it would grow. It would survive, like humanity, like hope. The Black Fleet moved toward the edge of the solar system, silent and dark. The Valith had no idea they were coming. They thought humanity was broken. They thought the execution had crushed human spirits forever. They were about to learn the truth. Humanity did not break. Humanity did not forget. And humanity, when pushed far enough, did not show mercy. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting for what would come next. Zorath Kell grew impatient. It had been 6 weeks since the execution, and the humans had done nothing. No angry transmissions, no desperate pleas, no attempted attacks that could be crushed and broadcast as another lesson. Just silence. The silence bothered him. They are broken, his advisor assured him. Their spirit has been crushed. They sit in their system and weep for their lost ambassador. Perhaps, the Primarch replied. But he had lived for 12,000 years, and he had learned that silence was rarely a sign of defeat. Silence was what predators used before they struck. Send a fleet to Sol, he ordered. 400 ships. Let them see our power up close. Remind them of their place. The subjugation fleet assembled within days. 400 warships, each one larger than anything humanity was supposed to have. They moved through space with the confidence of absolute power, their crews laughing about the easy mission ahead. They would enter the human system, parade past their little colonies, perhaps destroy a station or two as a reminder. Then they would return home as heroes. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Sensors swept the space ahead. "Report," the fleet commander ordered. His officers looked confused. "Sir, there's nothing here." "What do you mean, nothing?" "The orbital stations are empty. The lunar colonies show no life signs. Earth's defense platforms are powered down. It's like they've abandoned everything." The commander frowned. This was strange. Humans were not known for running away. They were known for fighting stupidly against impossible odds. That was one of the reasons the Valith considered them dangerous. "Move forward," he ordered. "Search pattern. Find where they're hiding." The subjugation fleet spread out, moving deeper into the system, past the outer planets, past the asteroid belt, toward the inner worlds. Every scan showed the same result. Empty space, empty stations, empty ships drifting without power. "This makes no sense," an officer muttered. "Where did 8 billion humans go?" They got their answer at Jupiter. The gas giant loomed ahead, its storms swirling in endless patterns. The fleet moved past it, sensors still searching for any sign of human life. Then the shadows moved. From behind Jupiter's moons, from within the planet's radiation belts, from places the Valith sensors could not penetrate, ships appeared. Not dozens, not hundreds, 1,200 human warships surrounding the subjugation fleet in a perfect sphere. The commander stared at his screen in disbelief. That's impossible. They were supposed to have only 50 ships. Old ships, weak ships. Sir, they're hailing us. A face appeared on the screen. Human, male, eyes that held no fear, only cold determination. Admiral Kiran Shaw did not smile. "This is Admiral Shaw of the United Earth Black Fleet," he said. "Your weapons are locked. Your shields are mapped. You have exactly 60 seconds to surrender, and you will be treated as prisoners according to the Geneva Stellar Conventions. If you do not surrender, you will be destroyed. There will be no second warning." The commander found his voice. "You dare threaten the Valith hegemony? We will crush you like the insects you are." Shaw's expression did not change. 50 seconds. The commander turned to his weapons officer. "Target the nearest human vessel. All ships, open fire." 400 Valith warships unleashed their weapons at once. Beams of energy, missiles, projectiles of pure plasma. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ships simply moved. They scattered in patterns that seemed random, but were actually perfect, slipping between weapons fire like water through fingers. Then they returned fire. The Valith had never seen weapons like these. Quantum lock missiles that could not be intercepted, that phased through shields as if they did not exist. Molecular dissolution beams, the same technology used to execute Elena Vasquez, now turned against her killers. Gravity weapons that crushed ships into balls of twisted metal. 11 minutes. That was how long the Battle of Jupiter's Shadow lasted. 400 Valith warships, crewed by beings who had conquered 1,000 worlds, destroyed in 11 minutes. Human losses, 37 dead. 2 ships damaged beyond repair. Admiral Shaw watched the debris field form, pieces of Valith ships tumbling slowly through space. He felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. "Search for survivors," he ordered. They found one escape pod, with a single Valith officer inside. He was brought aboard the Retribution, treated for his injuries, given food and water, and placed in comfortable quarters. Shaw visited him personally. "Why?" the Valith asked, still in shock. "Why did you not kill me? Why show mercy?" Shaw sat down across from him. "Because we are not what you think we are. We never were. Your Primarch called us beasts. He said violence was in our blood. He was half right. We are capable of terrible things, but we are also capable of choice. We chose not to kill you. What happens to me now? You go home. You tell your people what happened here. You tell them that this was not vengeance." Shaw leaned forward, and his eyes were dark. "Vengeance comes next." The escape pod was launched toward Valith space, with enough supplies for the journey. The surviving officer carried a message from Director General Okonkwo, recorded just for this purpose. "Primarch Zorath Kell," she said on the recording, "you executed our ambassador because you believed we were weak. You were wrong. You believed we would break. We did not. You believed your power made you untouchable. It does not." Her voice remained calm, almost gentle, but her words carried weight. "We are coming for you, not to destroy your people. We are not like you. But you personally will answer for what you have done. Run if you wish. Hide if you can. It will not matter. Humanity remembers Elena Vasquez, and we do not forget." Across the galaxy, the other species of the Concordat watched the news spread. 400 Valith warships destroyed in minutes. A human fleet that no one knew existed. A message that sounded less like a threat and more like a promise. Some species quietly reached out to Earth. The Rathani, who had suffered under Valith rule for millennia, offered intelligence about fleet positions. The Corveth navigators, forced to serve Valith ships, provided hyperspace routes that would allow human vessels to move unseen. Others simply waited, watching to see what would happen next. The Valith hegemony had seemed unbeatable for 80,000 years. Now, for the first time, that certainty was cracking. On Earth, Mira Vasquez watched the battle recordings in private. She saw the Valith ships burning, saw the weapons that had killed her grandmother turned against her killers. She should have felt satisfied. She should have felt happy. Instead, she felt only tired, and sad, and determined. "This is only the beginning, grandmother," she whispered to the empty room. "We will finish what you started. We will show them that humanity is more than they ever imagined." In the darkness of space, the Black Fleet regrouped and moved toward its next target. Behind them, Jupiter continued its endless dance around the sun, silent witness to the moment when everything changed. The silence before the storm was over. The Black Fleet crossed the galaxy in ways the Valith thought impossible. Human ghost drives left no trace, no signal, no warning. One day there were rumors of human ships somewhere in distant space. The next day, those ships were on the edge of Valith territory. Zorath Kell received the news of his subjugation fleet's destruction in silence. For a long moment, he simply sat on his throne, staring at the messenger who had delivered the report. 400 ships, he finally said. Gone in 11 minutes. Yes, Primarch. Zorath Kell had lived for 12,000 years. He had conquered empires. He had exterminated species. He had never known fear. But now something cold moved through him, something that might have been doubt. He crushed it immediately. "They caught us by surprise," he told himself and his council. "They will not do so again. Call every ship we have, every reserve, every patrol, every vessel across the hegemony. They want to challenge us? Let them face the full might of Valith power." 8,000 warships gathered at Valith Prime. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Ancient battleships that had ended civilizations, carriers filled with fighters, dreadnoughts the size of small moons. The orbital defense platforms powered up, shields that could withstand the death of a star. Zorath Kell addressed his people in a broadcast seen across the hegemony. "The humans are coming," he announced. "They believe their tricks and their hidden weapons make them powerful. They are wrong. They are animals who have somehow found guns, and animals with guns are still animals. We will crush them. We will burn their fleet, and then we will go to their homeworld and finish what we should have done years ago. Not quarantine, extinction." Across the galaxy, species watched and waited. Many believed the Primarch. The Valith had always won. They had always been stronger. Surely this time would be no different. Then the Black Fleet arrived. They did not come quietly. They did not sneak or hide. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in full view of Valith Prime, broadcasting their presence on every frequency. Every screen on the planet showed the human ships approaching, dark and deadly against the stars. "This is Admiral Kieran Shaw of the United Earth Black Fleet," the broadcast began. "We have come for Zorath Kell. Surrender him to us, and no further blood need be spilled. You have 1 hour to respond." Zorath Kell's response was to open fire. The Battle of Valith Prime began with the brightest light the galaxy had ever seen. 8,000 Valith ships unleashed everything they had at the human fleet. Space itself seemed to burn with the fury of their weapons. The Black Fleet did not retreat. They charged forward, into the fire, through the death. Ships exploded around them. Crews died in flames and vacuum, but the humans kept coming. Admiral Shaw stood on the bridge of the Retribution, the ship shaking with each hit. Around him, officers shouted reports over the noise of battle. "We've lost the Defiant. The Courage is down. Heavy casualties across the fleet." "Maintain formation," Shaw ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Push forward. Find gaps in their lines and exploit them." The battle raged for 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting, of ships burning, of lives lost. The Valith had numbers and experience, but the humans had something else. They had nothing left to lose. Human ships flew directly into Valith formations, weapons blazing until the moment of impact. Wounded vessels accelerated toward the enemy, instead of retreating. Crews who knew they were dying aimed for the biggest targets they could find. "They're insane," a Valith commander transmitted to his flagship. "They're not fighting like soldiers. They're fighting like people who watched you murder their ambassador," Shaw replied on the same frequency. "Like people who have been caged and insulted and threatened for 50 years. Like people who finally got angry." The Valith lines began to break, not from weakness, but from fear. They had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy that did not care about surviving, an enemy that seemed to welcome death if it meant taking their killers with them. On the third day, the orbital defenses fell. The planetary shields collapsed under sustained bombardment. The Black Fleet, what remained of it, moved into position above Valith Prime. Nearly half of humanity's ships had been destroyed. Thousands of humans had died. They had actually won against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. The Director General has something else in mind. Every screen on Valith Prime flickered. Every communication device activated. And Director General Amara Okonkwo appeared, speaking to 40 billion Valith and the entire watching galaxy. "You called us violent," she said. "You called us monsters. You showed the galaxy our worst moments, our darkest hours, and you said that was all we were." She paused, and her eyes seemed to look directly at Zorith Kell. "You were not entirely wrong. We carry darkness within us. Every human knows this. We have done terrible things in our history. We have capacity for cruelty that frightens even us. But you made a mistake, Primarch. You assumed that because we could be monsters, we had to be monsters. You forgot that we also have the power to choose." She took a breath. "So now I offer you a choice. We could destroy your world. Our weapons are in position. Your defenses are gone. 40 billion lives could end today, and there is nothing you could do to stop us." The Valith listening held their breath. "But we will not, because that would make us what you accused us of being. Instead, we will give you something worse than death. We will give you truth." Okonkwo nodded to someone off-screen. "Activate the Requiem Array." In orbit, a massive human ship unfolded like a flower. It was not a weapon, not in any traditional sense. It was something far more dangerous. The array fired, and a wave of energy swept across Valith Prime and beyond, reaching every corner of the hegemony. It did not kill, it did not destroy. It revealed. Every Valith suddenly saw their own history, not the glorious version taught in schools. The real history. 80,000 years of conquest and cruelty. Species wiped out because they asked for freedom. Civilizations burned because they dared to disagree. Billions of lives ended to feed Valith pride. They saw what their Primarchs had done, what they had ordered, what they had hidden. And they saw Elena Vasquez. They saw her speech, her hope, her kindness. They saw how she had died. They saw Zorith Kell's smile. Across the hegemony, Valith fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the weight of truth they had never been allowed to know. Many wept, some screamed, all understood finally what their civilization had truly been. Okonkwo's voice returned. "You judged us by our past, now face your own. We will not destroy you. We will not conquer you. We will simply leave you with the truth and let you decide what to do with it." The screens went dark. In his throne room, Zorith Kell stared at nothing, his ancient mind struggling to process what had happened. He had lost his fleet. He had lost his reputation. He had lost the great lie that had kept his people loyal for millennia. He had lost everything. Above Valith Prime, Admiral Shaw gave one final order before the Black Fleet withdrew. "Mark the coordinates. Record the time. Let history remember this moment." He looked down at the planet one last time. Elena Vasquez died because she believed in peace. Today, we honored her memory, not with vengeance, with justice. The Black Fleet turned toward home. Behind them, an empire began to crumble, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Veilith hegemony fell apart in 3 months. It was not destroyed by human weapons. It was destroyed by truth. Once the Requiem Array's revelation spread, nothing could stop the collapse. Species that had been conquered 80,000 years ago rose up against their masters. Veilith governors were overthrown. Veilith military bases were surrounded and forced to surrender. The lies that had held the empire together dissolved like morning mist. Zorath Kel was removed from power by his own people. They did not kill him. That would have been too kind. Instead, they made him watch. They made him see his empire crumble, his statues pulled down, his name become a curse spoken across 1,000,000 worlds. He lived for another 300 years, isolated and forgotten. The longest punishment the Veilith could imagine. The Galactic Concordat, the alliance the hegemony had controlled, dissolved with it. For a brief time, there was chaos. Species that had never governed themselves struggled to find their footing. Old hatreds between conquered peoples threatened to erupt into new wars. Then humanity stepped forward, not as conquerors, not as rulers, as something no one in the galaxy had expected: mediators. Director General Okonkwo traveled to 100 worlds in the months after the battle. She met with leaders of species who had every reason to hate each other, and she helped them find common ground. She did not demand tribute. She did not threaten. She simply talked and listened and helped. Why? The Rathani High Speaker asked her during one such meeting. You have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. You could rule us all. Why don't you? Okonkwo smiled sadly. Because that would make us exactly what the Veilith were. And we did not fight this war to become them. We fought to prove that a better way was possible. The new alliance that formed was called the Stellar Union. It was built on principles that humanity insisted upon: equality for all species regardless of size or age or power, the right to self-determination, the rejection of conquest as a tool of diplomacy, peace through cooperation, not fear. Many species did not trust it at first. They had been deceived before. But slowly, as years passed and humanity kept its promises, trust began to grow. The Stellar Union expanded. Trade flourished. Technologies were shared freely. The galaxy began to heal. Admiral Kiran Shaw retired 6 months after the battle. He had commanded the Black Fleet through its greatest victory, but he found no joy in it. The faces of the people who had died under his command haunted his dreams. He returned to Earth and found a small house near the ocean. He spent his days gardening, and his nights watching the stars. Sometimes reporters would come, asking him to talk about the battle, to relive the glory. He always sent them away. There was no glory, he told one persistent journalist, only necessity, only grief, only the hope that it would never have to happen again. One day, he received a visitor. Mira Vasquez stood at his door, older now, with silver beginning to show in her dark hair. She had been appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the Stellar Union, following in her grandmother's footsteps. I wanted to thank you, she said, for what you did, for all the lives you saved. Shaw shook his head. I didn't save anyone. I killed thousands. Veilith, human, it doesn't matter. Dead is dead. You gave us a future, Mira said gently. You gave my grandmother's dream a chance to live. Shaw was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photograph. Elena Vasquez, smiling, standing in a garden full of flowers. She sent this to me before her mission, he said. She wrote on the back that she hoped she would come home to plant more roses. He handed the photograph to Mira. "I never knew her, but I think she would have been proud of you." Mira took the photograph with trembling hands. "I hope so." The dedication ceremony for the Elena Vasquez Memorial took place on the 5th anniversary of the battle. It was held in Geneva, in a garden built especially for this purpose. Representatives from 300 species attended. For many, it was their first time visiting Earth. The memorial itself was simple: a white stone pillar with Elena's name carved into it, surrounded by roses that bloomed in every color imaginable. Beneath her name were the words she had spoken in her final moments. "My people will remember this, and they do not forget." Ambassador Mira Vasquez gave the dedication speech. She stood before the pillar, before the representatives of 300 worlds, and spoke without notes, just as her grandmother would have. "My grandmother believed in the goodness of other beings," she began. "She traveled to the heart of an enemy empire, unarmed and unafraid, because she believed that understanding was possible. She was wrong about the Primarch, but she was right about everything else." She looked out at the crowd, at the faces of species that had once been strangers, now becoming friends. "We are not perfect. Humanity has done terrible things in its history. We carry darkness within us, just as every thinking being does, but we also carry light. We carry hope. We carry the ability to look at our mistakes and choose to do better." She placed her hand on the memorial stone. "My grandmother died trying to build a bridge between worlds. Today that bridge exists. The stellar union is proof that her sacrifice was not meaningless. Peace is possible. Cooperation is possible. A galaxy where no one species rules over others, where every voice matters, where disagreements are solved with words instead of weapons. This is possible, because we chose to make it possible." She stepped back and looked up at the sky, at the stars just beginning to appear in the evening darkness. 5 years ago, the Valith Primarch called us insects. He said we were too small, too short-lived, too violent to matter. He thought that killing one old woman would teach us our place. A small smile crossed her face. He was right about one thing. We are short-lived compared to other species. We have maybe a century, if we're lucky. But in that century, we love with all our hearts. We dream with all our minds. We fight with all our strength. And we never, ever forget the people we've lost. She turned back to the memorial. "Grandmother, I don't know if you can hear me, but I want you to know that we did it. We found our place among the stars. Not through conquest, not through violence. Through the very things you believed in: patience, understanding, and hope. You showed us the way. We just had to be strong enough to follow it." The ceremony ended with a moment of silence that stretched across the galaxy. On 300 worlds, beings of every shape and size paused to remember a single human woman who had believed peace was possible. That night, Mira stayed in the garden long after everyone else had left. She sat beside the memorial, watching the stars wheel overhead. The same stars her grandmother had dreamed of reaching. The same stars that humanity now called home. "We made it," she whispered. "Not the way you planned, maybe, but we made it." A breeze rustled the roses, carrying the sweet scent of flowers and the promise of spring. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. The galaxy stretched out above her, vast and mysterious and beautiful. Once, it had been a prison. Now, it was a frontier, a challenge, an opportunity. Mira Vasquez smiled and closed her eyes. Humanity had been judged by ancient beings who thought they understood everything. Those beings had been wrong. They had looked at human history and seen only violence. They had missed the courage. They had missed the compassion. They had missed the stubborn, impossible hope that had carried humanity through every dark age, every disaster, every moment when giving up would have been easier. They had underestimated what humans could become when they chose to be more than their worst impulses. And in the end, humanity had judged itself. It had looked at its own reflection, seen both the darkness and the light, and chosen the light. The galaxy was changing. It would continue to change for thousands of years, as new alliances formed and old wounds healed. There would be challenges ahead. There always were. But humanity would face them the same way they had faced everything else. Together, with hope in their hearts and stars in their eyes. Elena Vasquez had died believing that peace was possible. She had been right, and the universe was better for it.